Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee to order. Thanks for being here. Just for everybody's awareness, we do have Commissioner Curran online. She is not feeling the greatest today, so welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you.
I hope you're feeling better soon.
Me too.
She is, last I heard, she was okay.
I'm alive. I'm alive.
Live. Commissioner Bergman is traveling, so won't be here with us today. Okay, so first up on our agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to give public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
A motion and support to approve the agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. We have no consent today and really just have one action item and what is a report updates from Administrator Gibbs. So let's handle our action item first. That would be election of committee vice chair. Suggested motion is to elect someone as a commissioner as vice chairperson of the Strategic Planning Committee for 2024. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make the motion for Commissioner Rhodey to serve as vice chair.
Okay, we have a motion. Could we get support for the motion? Support, thank you. So Commissioner Miedema has nominated Commissioner Rhodey. Anyone else like to be considered? Any other nominations? Okay, let's just go to vote then. So on the motion to elect Commissioner Rhodey as vice chairperson of the Strategic Planning Committee for 2024, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
I think we have to do roll call with Commissioner Curran, don't we, today?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. Apologies, Commissioner Curran. If we could go to a vote, please.
Mr. Belknap,
Commissioner Rhodey.
Mrs. Curran cannot vote.
Rhodey.
She may vote because she's sick. Yeah.
Ms. Cosby,
Commissioner Rhodey.
Mr. Bonema,
Commissioner Rhodey.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Rhodey.
Mr. Zylstra,
Rhodey.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Rhodey.
Mrs. Miedema,
Rhodey.
Mrs. Ebel,
Rhodey.
Mr. Moss.
Rhodey.
Motion passed.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Miedema. Okay, so we're up to main order of business today, 2024 strategic plan presentation from Administrator Gibbs. Get kind of a first take on current status and things like that. So take it away.
Thank you, Chair Moss, and thank you to all the members of the board. Very excited to present to you what we're looking at for a strategic plan and to begin a good conversation here and get your feedback as we go forward together on this. So I'd like to jump in first on kind of a little bit of history, just a very small amount and background on the strategic plan. So most recent one is the 2022-23 strategic plan, was released in the fall of 22. Was done internally, facilitated by administration, and included an offsite planning session in the summer of 2022. It's kind of informed the directors and the elected officials on what the plan is going to be about. And I think it's a good plan. It's got a lot of good elements to it and it captures a lot of good work. So I think it's a good foundation to start with. And we do want to take that good foundation and build up on it, maybe change a few things as well. So one of the things you do notice about the current strategic plan is it has a lot of text. And so, you read through the text and that's good. I myself think you do need some level of narrative, but I'm more of a numbers person. I think numbers in certain cases can be an easier way to tell a story and to tell how a dollar is being spent. And so I look forward to getting kind of a more numerical focus there. And I'm having some narrative, of course, but maybe a little bit less than what we have currently. This is another page from the current strategic plan. You can see, of course, that it tends to be quite text heavy. You can also see that there's lots of sub items and sub items there. So for goal 1, you can see the objective, and then you can see the sub objective, then the sub objective, and then who it's assigned to there. And I think it's good to try to capture this information, but I also think it can be a little bit unwieldy at times. And so I think that's something we would want to look at in terms of how we present information in the new strategic plan. Many of the items do not have due dates or measurables, and so they say ongoing. And I think many of those sub-objectives are actually good things, and the sub-objectives as well, they're good things, but it's difficult to know how well you're tracking on it if there's not a way to measure it or there's not a date by which you're going to look at something being done. So I think that's something we want to incorporate into the plan going forward, is making sure that we do have some metrics to look at. You see that here with goal 3, which has a similar idea where there's no metrics there or no due dates. And again, I do think that some of the objectives are good objectives, but we do need to be able to know how to measure it, how to track it. So what's changing then between the way the plan kind of is now and what I would like to look at for the plan for this year? So the current plan, we have a lot of standalone metrics in there, and I'll talk about that a little bit later here. But for example, you might say in X program, we served 74 people. That metric may or may not be valuable. It's hard to know. And it also doesn't tell you how a dollar is being spent. And it doesn't tell you how staff time is being used. And without further context, it's impossible to know if that number is a good number or something we need to improve on. So we want to move from standalone metrics to cost of service delivery. And so that, I think, is a better and more natural way of looking at how dollars are being spent and how staff resources are being used. And again, I'll touch on that a little bit later. As I shared earlier, the current strategic plan tends to be very narrative driven. And I think there is a place for some level of narrative, but I would like to make things a little bit more data driven because I do think in something like a strategic plan, numbers do tell the story in a powerful way. The current plan is a PDF. That is the final product for it. It's a PDF document. I would like to see something that is dashboard driven, especially with an online interface where you can go and look at the key performance indicators for the county and for the departments in a way that is not necessarily, it could be a PDF, but it also could be, it could take advantage of technology and have an interactive dashboard element to it, especially for the public. I think that makes things easier to visualize. The current plan was done in-house. I think there is a lot of wisdom to using a vendor to do a strategic plan, which I'll touch on a little bit later. So that's the path we'd like to go this time. So let me touch on some of these points. Cost of service delivery. As I said earlier, right now we might say we served 144 people in program X. I think we want to get to a model that says it costs, say, I'm just making these numbers up, just examples, $4,481 per person served. Next year's target is $4,105 per person served. I think when you present information this way, it really empowers the departments to tell their story in a way that can answer a lot of questions before they're even asked. Because it gets to what people really want to know, which is how far is a dollar going in the county? And I think this takes us a long way there. Or to say it took 0.78 FTE hours per person served. Next year's target is, say, 0.72. When we look at things this way, it makes it easier to know how much staff resources are being used to serve people in a particular program. I really appreciate Commissioner Cosby, who was very frequently bringing this up and looking at things that way with the background he brought from the healthcare field. So I think this is really a good way of looking at things. So why cost of service delivery? Again, it lets us capture better how each dollar is spent. It lets us capture better how staff resources are being used. And also it lets us compare ourselves easier. You know, we could say that in a certain program, we served 120 people and a county next to us served 200, but that in alone, in and of itself, doesn't really tell you anything because you don't know the size of their department. You don't know their budget. You don't know how much staffing they have. But when you look at things on a per basis or a cost of service delivery basis, you can start looking at how much did it cost per person served and how much staff did it take per person served. it makes it a lot easier to compare to other jurisdictions that have different sizes than us because you're normalizing that measure. So I think makes a lot of sense. So let's also compare ourselves again to surrounding counties, to state standards or national standards, and also to compare ourselves to past performance and set goals for future performance. So this dashboard here, the text is kind of small, you can't really see it. And it's just an example. It's not meant to indicate anything particular, but this is an example dashboard for an HR department, which has some KPI metrics on it. This is kind of the direction I think we'd like to go here with a dashboard that lets you look at things visually and that has some consistency across departments and programs. So you can kind of flip through and see where we're at. This is another example as well of this I think is a company. So don't pay attention to the actual fact that it's a company, but what we are looking at here is you see like cost per drop on the top left there. You see other measures there in those fields. And those are kind of the direction we want to be going here, is looking at things in a dashboard type format, perhaps in a visual presentation like this. So one of the other things I'd like to change is using a vendor versus in-house. I think one of the reasons we might want to do that is you get an independent perspective. I think having a vendor facilitate things does make things easier in some way for the staff and added a voice of independence that I think it's easy for people to work with. A vendor who specializes in this kind of thing has infrastructure, data, and tools that they use for this that we'd be able to leverage right off the bat. And it reduces the burden on the staff from being the ones that are driving to having a vendor doing it. So I think there's a lot of advantages there. And I think you do see a lot of counties and organizations using vendors to do strategic plans. So what would be the timeline and process? The first row I have there, familiarization and assessment. So that was the first year. That was a process of getting familiar with the departments and programs and the workings of the county, which I think it was very good and smart to take that year to get that familiarization. And with that under our belt now, I think it's good to jump into the strategic plan here. So I've got January to March, defining the scope, issued RFP and select vendor. Spring 24, having an offsite strategic planning session, kind of similar to the one that was done in the summer of 2022. Once the vendor is all selected, I envision the plan development would be something around March to June of this year, and then perhaps the summer 24 release of the strategic plan. This, of course, is subject to flex a little bit as we get the details nailed down, but this is roughly what we're looking at. So one reference point, you know, when we start thinking about cost, how do we know how much it should cost? How do we know how much should be budgeted for this? The parks departments did their strategic plan with 3 different components to it, as you see here. The strategic plan itself, scientific survey, and a community benefits analysis. You can see what was budgeted for each of those components of the Parks Department strategic plan. And then you can see on the right column there, the actual amount that the bid came in at. And so more was budgeted than the actual bid that came in. I think that's a smart way of doing things so that you can make sure you're ready for whatever it comes back to as you get answers back from the RFP. So this is just an example of our own Parks Department and what they did for their strategic plan. So Kalamazoo County, they did a strategic plan. They put out an RFP. They received 6 responses ranging from $73,000 to $167,000, and the average response came out to $98,645. Macomb County did one. Their response range, as you see here, is $120,000 to $246,000, and their average response was $156,735 for the 5 responses that they got back. This gives you a little bit of a ballpark as to what you can look at or expect for a county doing a strategic plan. So I talked a lot with procurement, I talked with parks, talked with strategic impact, and really got a lot of feedback. We think $100,000 budget would be able to get us a really good plan. And if the actual bid that comes back is less than that, that's good news. But I think we want to make sure that we're able to get something good. And my plan is to submit an action request at the February 6th Finance Committee meeting for this. And I'd like to give you all the commissioners the time between now and then to really think about and digest and soak in what we're looking at. We'll be sending out this presentation to you as well, and hope to have a robust discussion and hear your thoughts on the strategic plan. And that's what I had for the presentation, and very happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Administrator Gibbs. Does anybody have any initial questions, any thoughts? Commissioner Cosby?
I've got several here, just kind of
Sure.
thoughts as you walk through that. So as you're looking at KPIs, like describing, so key performance indicators for each department.
Mhm.
And I know I'm kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, but I think it's important for kind of the general public to know this. These are, key performance indicators that are you winning, are you losing? And each department, because of their uniqueness, is going to have their own set of KPIs. I like that you're going to do due dates because you do the short-term goals that lead to a long-term goal, overall goal, and then using an outside vendor. I'm wondering if there's some opportunity by doing that to share that vendor with your other departments. So cost savings, but also continuity of your plan as well.
Share in terms of,
In time, because I know already it's been budgeted and some of the departments already have their own strategic plan, but just looking into the future with that
Sure.
vendor, seeing if that vendor would actually be able to support all departments. I think they'll get to know the county better too,
sure.
and kind of how they all interact. Yeah, and your strategic plan definitely tells the story. So with your action request, for $100,000, what budget do you see that coming out of?
I would see it coming from the general fund.
From the general fund?
Mhm.
And do we know we have that in
Oh, we do,
that
yes.
amount in the fund?
Mhm.
Okay.
It also could come, for example, from the board initiatives fund. There's lots of different choices out there as to where it could come from, but the funding is there. It's just a matter of where we want to pull it from.
Okay. And then, I like the fact that you're using comparables too.
Yeah, and one of the things there, if I can elaborate on that a little bit, is if we develop our KPIs, I think we want to be able to compare those to neighboring counties. One of the things a vendor could help us with is getting that data, because you may not be able to directly in one step get some of this data from other counties, but it may be possible to get in 2 or 3 steps. So for example, you can get the overall budget from one place, you get the head count from another place, and you can do the math wizardry on that and be able to look at costs per person served for different counties. So it is possible to get a lot of this data. Some of it will require a couple of steps. And one of the things we'll have the vendor doing is helping us to develop a system to do that.
Our 300,000 here in Ottawa County doesn't look like Saginaw's, for instance.
Right, exactly.
Department will service differently.
Right.
Yep.
And then where are they publishing their data? Are they doing it in their meeting minutes? Are they reporting it to the state? Are they reporting it to the federal government? So being able to find out those data sources as well and being able to get that information will be really important.
Thank you.
Anything else? Commissioner Belknap?
Just a comment that I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the trajectory of our fiscal services and being able to add measurement into the budget. And, we're going to start mingling this information together so that, we start to get, I guess, adept at sharing what these KPIs are and get familiar with it. From the standpoint of, what a strategic plan document looks like and a separate budget document, and then we have dashboards. It seems like, in time, a lot of this information will kind of meld together.
Right. I think that's a very good point, Commissioner Belknap, because right now, for example, as part of the annual audit process, the departments are reporting certain KPIs that go into that annual financial reporting, but that has not been part of the strategic plan. And so I sat with Paul and we actually went over a lot of that data that's being reported. Some of that is quite relevant for what we're looking at here, and some of it will need to change a little bit. So that's an example of how we are collecting some data, but it has not been incorporated into the strategic plan. So yeah, I think this idea of taking what's out there and being able to correctly integrate it in the budgeting software and what we're looking at there as well is going to be a part of this process.
Do you foresee a report? Because this is what I would love to do. I would love to see you guys with your strategic plan when the departments come and they report to us to talk about how they're winning through their KPIs, and then I hate to use the word losing in this respect, but where do you need help? Where's your ask? And then really showcase their departments. And then we can get a quick look at their measures to see how we can be beneficial to them as far as appropriations is concerned.
Absolutely. You know, I was saying earlier, I think this really empowers the departments to be able to tell their story in a way that answers questions before they're asked. I think if a department can say, in this program, it took us 0.78 FTE hours per person served, but next year we want to go to 0.74. So we're able to serve more people with the same amount of staff by doing the following things to increase efficiency. That's a great story. And it's numerical, and so it's subjective. I think that really is an empowering thing for our department. So yeah, I'm excited about that prospect.
All right, I got a few comments.
Sure.
I'm really excited. I'd really like to hear that this is going to be heavy on measurables. I know that the board prioritizes that, and I know you do as well. We've seen that already in the push for budget software and other, improvements in the county. Not only then makes it easier for residents to get data or commissioners or others, but also then adds to that transparency so we can continue to put information out publicly. I really like that. One of the outcomes that Commissioner Cosby sort of just mentioned too is one thing I see happening is as time goes on and the KPIs are more familiar for people to be reporting on, then we would hope that then that could be pulled into committee meetings. That'd be great, with more regular updates. The narrative updates are great too, but being able to supplement that then to tell the story of the department, I believe is going to be very helpful for the county. And then also being able to pull that online and making that public will be great. Cost of service, really, I wholeheartedly support this. I think it's a great direction. I really appreciate how you worded that. How far is a dollar going in the county? That's good. We have a $250 to $300 million budget every year. It's a large budget, so it'll be really helpful to be able to identify areas for opportunity. And then I think help all of us as commissioners and staff and departments to work together to be innovative as well, and look for areas where we can solve problems and create efficiencies, things like that. Got a couple more comments. So you mentioned setting goals, very critical. I think also what we're going to be able to do is set trends. And while we may need to do a little extra work to go find the data we need in other counties, if we're going to try to do comparables, my hope would be that we can then set a trend and show other counties, demonstrate how to do this type of work and do it really well, so that we could then bring other counties along with us. Lastly, I know we're going to be looking at a certain term, certain time period, and we have a need to look at the next, 1 to 5 years. But additionally, we really need to be looking at a 10 to 20 year plan as well, keeping that in mind. That way we can focus long-term on the prosperity of Ottawa County, building in strong communities, prioritizing farmland, other areas that are going to be critical to preserve the heritage of Ottawa County so that we can leave a strong legacy for children and grandchildren and build into our communities. And so I see all of what we're doing here wrapping up into that. And so I'm really excited and looking forward to next steps. So thank you for being here today and getting this project started, and we'll look forward to future updates.
Great, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone who would like to give public comment? Welcome. If you could please state your name and jurisdiction.
Sure.
3 minutes.
Karen Obitz, Spring Lake Village. So I am not well versed in strategic planning from the point of view you as commissioners will need to be, because I was never in a position in my work life where I did much in that, but I certainly inherited the results of different strategic planning efforts and foci over the course of my years in the workforce. So in that regard, when I listened to this presentation and the questions and comments made by some of you here after the presentation was delivered by Administrator Gibbs, I had a few little, antennae clicks go. So the idea of the cost of service delivery model and the need to compare how Ottawa County might do with this type of model over against other counties. Might it be because of the fact that those counties are not currently using such a cost of service delivery model that you would have a hard time backing into those comparables? I'm just asking questions. I hear Commissioner Moss saying we want to, emphasize the perpetuation of Ottawa County's heritage and the need for, prosperity. I'd like to know how you define that. What's prosperity and what is the heritage we're hoping to leave? I have my own ideas about that. The idea of then sourcing this out to a vendor, does that mean the individual commissioners will have less input on some of that work? From my understanding, that was not the way it was done before. Again, it's never a bad idea to think of new models. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just asking questions about the amount of time and investment and creativity we could still expect to see from the individual commissioners in this kind of strategic planning approach. Lastly, so we hear that it's really great that we're moving in this direction, and Administrator Gibbs complimented Commissioner Cosby on her often bringing up the need for data-driven and all that, which comes out of your work in the healthcare field. It's my impression that one of the reasons, and again, I'm not well-versed in this, that the healthcare industry in this country is so cost delivery focused to satisfy insurance companies. But you ask most Americans how they feel about their healthcare, and they'll do a lot of complaining about the need to fill out insurance forms. And they'll do a lot of complaining about always being asked to give their impression of their service, because that has to go back to the insurance companies to ensure that the insurance companies will still be giving them favorable rates for their services. I'm a little leery of the cost for service delivery for some of the reasons I just tried to nudge you to think about in my comments this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board or the committee? All right, seeing none, thank you everyone for attending today, and this meeting is adjourned.